Hey, what is up, my YouTubian subscribers? Secured here to do my review for RWBY Volume 5, Chapter 11, More the Merrier. Now, if you don't know, I spoil the episode through my reviews or through my commentary on the episode, so if you haven't watched it, leave until Saturday, next Saturday, or I believe it's Tuesday or Wednesday when it's released on Rooster Teeth's website for members. That being said, like, comment down below. On with the show. Now, this chapter is a mostly fighting chapter, so there's not much to review other than the fact that Crow fights Raven, RWBY fights Emerald, Yang fights Mercury, Weiss fights Vernal, the two Ren and Nora fight Hazel Reinhardt, which is honestly, that's going to be the worst fight, I think, because that's the biggest stomp fight we've seen. While Emerald and Mercury are clearly better than Team RWBY and Team Juniper, they're not so far ahead of Team RWBY and Team Juniper that it would be a stomp. This fight, but Hazel is a monster. Hazel's compared to Tyrion in this episode, and we all seen what happened with Tyrion last volume. Tyrion absolutely stomped Team Ranger without losing his aura, without taking many hits, never mind. So Hazel should just walk through them essentially. Now I know people are gonna say, well, they've been training for 2 months. Yeah, I guess, but that shouldn't be enough to close the gap between Hazel and a student level character. That being said, Ozpin fights Leo Lionheart, and I think I've already said, but John fights Cinder. Now basically this chapter opens up with Team Ranger. Team and RWBY and Team Ranger, I guess it's Juniper and RWBY now. They're meeting up with Leo. Now Leonardo, basically they walk in. Leonardo greets them. He asks why they have their weapons, and Crow replies with, "We're huntsmen." Obviously, we're gonna have, like, I don't know. That just gave away any kind of secrecy for Leo Lionheart right there, in my opinion. We then see Yang scanning the room. She sees Raven perched, and she goes, "Mom?" And then Crow takes a shot at her. Crow takes a shot. Raven flies behind. They just really don't want to animate the transformation. She flies behind Leo, transforms back into her human form, and then they talk. Basically, she continues her, "Oh, we can't beat Salem. Leo's a smart person. He chose the winning side," essentially is what she's saying. We then have RWBY try to convert Raven. RWBY's like, "You're wrong. We've done things that are called impossible before because we had each other." And then Raven looks at RWBY and says, "You sound just like your mom." And then she opens up a portal. RWBY is blasted back by a fireball thrown by Cinder, and then Cinder walks through the portal, and immediately Crow puts it all together. Crow's like, Leo, it's you. How long? Everyone who's died, my theory, what I've been saying since pretty much the beginning of this volume, or since Crow had all those huntsmen dead. Leonardo's been giving Salem the information, and then Salem's been sending Tyrion or Hazel out to kill the huntsman. Confirmed theory. What? But that one was pretty obvious, so I'm not gonna be like, "Good job, Secured." No, I'm not gonna say that. That being said, we then have John break into the conversation. John is like, "How can you be so broken? How can you kill so many people and just say it with a smirk on your face?" And Cinder goes, "Who are you?" And then John breaks. John charges her. They meet sword to sword. John's great sword form versus Cinder's glass sword. She's apparently gotten much stronger with her ability to make weapons. They're not just glass. They're glass imbued with fire, and it looks cool. It looks similar to a lightsaber. That being said, they clash, and then the fight begins. Raven immediately tells Vernal to go after Weiss, and I'll say this, I'm gonna break down each fight individually because, well, I don't really need to. The opening pretty much states what happened in this chapter. from a different angle from Jean's perspective. Essentially, what we see is a slightly different angled version of the fights that happened in the opening. Now, Raven immediately says, go after Vernal, and then Crow's on top of her. Crow slams his sword into her sword, and he's like, running away was one thing, but we're done. We're not family anymore. And Vernal and Raven goes, were we ever really? And he's like, I thought so. We then see Hazel, and we see Hazel watching Oscar, and Oscar's making his way up to Leo Lionheart, and then he notices Ren and Nora. He's like, I don't want to fight you, and Ren is like, yeah, the feeling's mutual, and then Nora, of course, is like, but you're with her, so hammer time. And then we have a clash between Leo and Ozpin. Ozpin overwhelms. Essentially, what happens is Leo doesn't realize immediately that it's Ozpin until he pulls out the cane, and then from there, Leo essentially gets stomped. Lionheart lands no hits, and Oscar. It's not Ozpin possessing Oscar, but apparently it's Oscar. Oscar is just pure skill at this point. He's able to match headmaster level character with relative ease. We then have Leo make that discovery. He's like, oh, you're Ozpin. How did you find Crow? How did you... Yeah, he's just shocked, and then he realizes, hey, this isn't fully Ozpin yet. You've only had this form a short period of time. And then we cut away again. We cut away to RWBY versus Emerald. And essentially what happens is RWBY's trying to interrupt the Jean Cinder fight, and Emerald ain't having any of it. When RWBY comments that she's gonna make the comment that Salem will destroy the world, but Emerald's like, I don't give a fuck. I don't care. I owe Cinder everything. And then we cut away again to Weiss. Now Weiss, honestly, this is why what I was talking about. Weiss's fighting style, this is very, very inconsistent, because we've seen Weiss almost instantaneously summon her glyphs, her summons, yet in this chapter she struggles to summon it mid-fight. Now, to me, like, I'm just very, very... It's an inconsistency in her. Like, I don't care, because it looks nice. The fight itself is really well animated. Don't get me wrong. The fight, it flows better. It's much, much stronger than the fight with the bees, with the hornet things from Dread in the Air. Like, Weiss, there's weight to Weiss's movements. There's fluidity to her movements. There's power behind her movements, and you see it with Vernal as well. Vernal is smart. Vernal isn't giving Weiss room to really use her ranged game, which is her game. Yeah, so Vernal's pushing Weiss back. Weiss is using her glyphs to try to create distance. She then creates an ice wall, which Vernal immediately slices down, and that was where my biggest issue lies, because Weiss is summoning her knight, and he's like slowly coming out of the ground, just like that, like one hand at a time, just slowly pushing himself out of the glyph. And I'm like, that's not how they've established, like, and it's not like the giant form. Like, had she been trying to summon the giant form of the knight, I would have been like, okay, maybe she can't summon the knight in that size quickly. But it's the medium sized knight. It's the knight that's taller than Weiss, but not taller than someone like it's not taller than like a Reinhardt, like Hazel. So we've seen her summon that thing in like split second, and I'm just like, that's no, that's stupid. That's gone against what we've seen her do before in this volume, and she's had a couple of weeks to a couple of months of training, so she should be able to summon that thing faster than before. That being said, we then have Vernal crack Weiss's aura, and that's the most important thing that happens this chapter. Weiss tries to summon the knight. Vernal then uses her, like, they're like pistols they're like circular blades with pistols, like a better version of what that Team Bronze member used with the saw blades on his wrist. They're like better versions of that. she goes like that, and then sends a wave of fire through the glass and hits Weiss in the chest and shatters her aura. We then go back to Jean versus Cinder, and Cinder's obviously winning this fight. Cinder is like, Jean is nothing to Cinder, nothing at all. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, Jean's gonna activate his semblance. Jean's gonna, because he's getting mad, he's losing control of his emotions, and then RWBY sees it. She shatters the glass around her sword and creates just a pure like plasma blade essentially, and she has a flashback. She sees the death of Pyrrha and she activates her silver eyes. Now immediately I was like, oh shit, this is how they're gonna win, isn't it? She's gonna hurt all of them enough that the injuries are gonna play a big important role with how Team RWBY and Team Juniper and Crow win this fight. Nope. Immediately Emerald takes RWBY out. Emerald strikes RWBY in the back of the head, knocks her out, and I'm like, yes. Well, the silver-eyed attack had hit Cinder, and it was enough to injure her. She collapses to the ground, and Jean immediately. I'm so glad that they didn't have Jean try to redeem Cinder or talk to Cinder or anything. Nah, he just outright went for the fucking kill. He went for her eye. She sees it in slow motion. The blade goes like that, and it nicks her. And she immediately knocks Jean down. After that, she's like, "Did you really think you were gonna beat me?" And she's like, "You're just a boy, too stubborn to know when he's outmatched." And she steps on his chest. His Croquia Moors is just out of range, and then she looks down at him and says, "Did you really think you would win?" And John replies with, "It doesn't matter if I lose, if I die. What matters is them." And then we get the shot from the opening. We see Emerald and Yang clashing just like in the opening. We see Hazel and Nora clashing just like from the opening, and yeah, it's cool. I'm glad that they incorporate it. Like, obviously, it's somewhat lazy animating. Well, it's not really, because they had to change. They had to replicate the animation. To the people who are gonna argue that it's lazy animation, they had to replicate it anyways. Like, they had to reshoot because where they're fighting is completely different than where they're fighting in the opening. Even though, yeah, it looks kind of similar with it just being an open, flat room. We then have Jean reply with, "No, it's them. They're important." And Cinder smirks and says, "Okay then, they're important." She then creates a spear out of her sword and throws it, and it hits Weiss. Weiss stops, and then you see it's very, very similar to the shot with Pyrrha, and she's sitting there with the blade through her chest, and then the chapter ends, and I'm like, oh my god. Now, we all know Weiss is gonna be fine. There's no frickin' way they're gonna kill off Weiss. No frickin' way. Jean's gonna activate his semblance, and it's gonna be some kind of super. Either there's two ways I can see this going down. Now, I originally thought it was a barrier or something like Yang's semblance or Adam's semblance, where he absorbs damage and then reflects it back. I don't think that anymore. I think it's a healing semblance. I think his semblance is some kind of super amplification to aura. It would make sense, because he's Jean. There's like three semblances I can see him having. Pyrrha's semblance, I can see him having magnetism, but I don't think that would help in this fight. So I don't think they're gonna have that be it. Or a Yang Adam type of semblance, or a Super Saiyan type of semblance, one that amplifies all of Jean's abilities, including his healing factor. Now, to me, do I want that last one? I don't know, because Jean has been Jean. If you say what you want about Jean as a character, the fact is he's been catching up very, very rapidly. Like, the fact is he started this series off as no training, no aura, no idea what a semblance or an aura was, called Grim Monsters. I think we're forgetting that he's some country bumpkin war hero family. And yeah, but he's been catching up slowly but surely. We've seen in Volume 3 he's capable of fighting average students. We've seen in Volume 4 he's capable of at least not being a nuisance during the Nukalave Grim fight. Now, the Tyrion fight isn't a good example because everyone was treated as like just fodder for Tyrion. But he's been catching up, and so I can see it. I can see him activating his semblance, it being something like a Super Saiyan, where he it gets a temporary boost in power, but it drains his aura really, really fucking fast, and he's capable of overwhelming Cinder in that moment. And yeah, because I don't see them killing Cinder this early on in the series either. Like, I can see her being around for a little bit longer. So I think she'll retreat if it looks like she's gonna lose. If Jean's semblance enables him to fight on par with a maiden. Yeah, so yeah, it's hard to predict. Like, it's been a fighting chapter, so it's very it's hard to review this chapter because it's just fighting. Like, I could break down like the fact that yeah, but not much happened other than fighting. Like I said, confirmed my theory that Leo killed all of those huntsmen. There's that, but really that's it. No new semblances, no new aura activations, nothing. Just pure fighting, and it's much more enjoyable than the Blake Ilya fight from last chapter. It's much more enjoyable than pretty much every fight this volume, minus maybe Yang versus the thugs of Ravens, because that was just like, I know Mediocrity calls that lazy animation, and he's like, hey, that wouldn't block bullets. It's like, dude, she has a metal arm. Like, Mediocrity, I love Mediocrity. I usually agree with him, but there is that area. He really loved the Blake fight from last chapter, and I really loved the Yang fight from like chapter 4, because it flowed better. It looked better, and it that's all that matters when it comes to animation, is it needs to look good. And the Blake fight didn't look good. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. The chapter was good though. Like I said, the characters who are fighting, it makes sense. Like, you have motivation for Jean to just go out there and attack Cinder. You have motivation for Emerald to fight Ruby because Ruby's trying to interrupt Cinder and fight Cinder. Yang and Mercury don't like one another because of the fight they had in the Vital Festival. Hazel, honestly, the weakest fight, like I said, is the Hazel versus Lyren and Nora Valkyrie fight, because that fight doesn't have any meaning behind it. We've seen that there was some kind of freaking rivalry being built up earlier on in the volume between Weiss and Vernal, so that makes sense. Obviously, the Crow Raven fight has been hyped for a while, since like chapter 9 or even earlier. Like, I'd go so far as to say volume 4, chapter, I believe it was 3 or 4, when they talk to one another. Like, I'd say people are saying they want to see those two fights since then. So yeah, all the fights make sense. My main issue is that I'm worried Jean's semblance is going to be something stupidly overpowered to compensate for the fact that they should lose this fight. Like, there's no fucking way they should win this fight. You have two maidens, Hazel, those three alone should be able to just stomp all of Team Ranger, all of Team RWBY, all Crow, pretty much everyone. If the maidens plus Hazel were to fight everyone in that room, they would come out on top, in my opinion. But then you add to that Mercury, Emerald, and Lionheart and Raven, and it's like, dude, this is just, it's a stomp in the favor of the bad guys, essentially. And so yeah, like I said, my biggest fear is that they're gonna give Jean some stupid overpowered semblance to compensate, and then I'm willing to bet Osmond's gonna I'm willing to bet Osmond reveals that he knew Jean's semblance is gonna be that. I'm willing to bet that Jean has a hereditary semblance like the Schnees. I'm willing to bet that. I'm willing to bet that he's that it's heavily implied that he's from a family of war heroes, so I'm willing to bet Osmond's fought alongside Arcs before, either in his past lives or his current life, which was Osmond at the time, and that's why he allowed Jean into his academy, even though Jean had no training, no semblance, no aura. That's why I'm willing to bet, like, yeah, I'm willing to bet that's what's going to happen. I'm willing to bet the last 5 chapters are going to be establishing that as potentially what's going to happen. And I'm willing to bet we might even have a flashback chapter next couple chapters. I can see them flashing back to a kid John and establishing that his dad had this semblance before him, or his mom had this semblance before him, since it seems to be a very, very female-oriented show. And it's not feminist, but the main characters are all female. The main characters are all, like, the most powerful characters in the series are all women, minus Ospen. But that's not the issue. Like, I don't care. Like, as long as they keep the politics as a secondary to the main storyline, that's fine by me. Like, you can't have a Last Jedi type of situation where the politics are so in your face that they become choking. They choke the narrative. So that's my main issue with this chapter is, yeah, I'm worried that John's going to come out in the next chapter. I'm worried John's going to sit there, go into a near catatonic state. It's then going to go back to John on his farm or wherever he was living before. We're going to meet his family. We're going to see that John's dad activates his semblance, and then that's what kicks John in the ass to get him to lie his way into Beacon. And I'm willing to bet, like, yeah, that's my, like, I'm willing to bet it's going to be something similar to Ultra Instincts, where the physical change is very minimal, but you see the aura around him. It's going to be a white, almost white aura, a knight in shining armor, essentially. We then go to the next chapter, which will continue Jean's backstory, and then we then go to 13-14. Jean attacks Cinder with his activated semblance, injures her enough that she retreats, and with her goes Emerald and Mercury, leaving Hazel, Leo, and Raven and Vernal to fight. We then have Blake join the fray eventually somewhere in the line, and that's my theory for how the rest of this story arc is gonna go down. Because with Ruby taken out, even just temporarily, her silver eyes aren't gonna be a thing for at least a little bit longer. The only other character who has any, there's Captain America. I'm gonna reference Captain America Civil War, where Ant-Man activates the giant form, and Tony Stark's like, does anyone on our side have any fantastic abilities they'd like to reveal? Because I'm open to suggestions here. I'm willing to bet that's what's gonna happen. John's the only one left with any form of mystery in terms of his combat abilities. So yeah, Securage signing off.